So I've got like 6 questions
All right.
for you,
6 is good.
and to see what your take on it on the matter is. And so let's start by the one that everybody lately has been talking about, and I know for a fact you have been talking about it for years: the MQL.
The MQL.
The MQL is no longer a measure for success in demand generation. Why?
Yeah. So first of all, that MQL that you have, if it's any good at all, has friends that came with it to the company. So in other words, if you've got an MQL that's going to turn into business for your company, it's because that MQL came to your website with friends. And if you don't know that, if you aren't seeing that, then you're missing out on the big picture of why that MQL is really valuable. So one, it was never the right signal of a buyer. And then it certainly isn't the right measure, because if marketing is engaging, well, first of all, average buying team is 10 people. All 10 of those people tell us that they go to vendor websites during the process. Marketing is attracting and engaging those folks. So you need to be measuring that full engagement of the buying team, because that's what marketing is actually producing. If you're just measuring yourself and looking at based on that one MQL that gets through, you're essentially cutting off 9/10 of what marketing is doing. And that's why that attribution metric based on the MQL always looks terrible, absolutely terrible. Did a presentation for a European Serious Decision Summit a few years back and said why your falling lead conversion rate is a good thing. A couple of years later, I did a presentation called Marketing Sourced Attribution is Your Pathway to Irrelevance. So that's what I think about that.
Yeah. Okay. And you mentioned it, so no MQL, no individuals, but groups.
Yeah.
So what about the groups?
The average buying team, buying committee, we call it a buying group, is 10 people in B2B. So if your solution costs $100,000, $200,000, something like that in a year, your buying group is at least 10 people who are involved in that process. What we know from our research is that all 10 of those people are going to come to your website. About 2 of them are going to fill out a form. If they're going to buy from you, 3 of those people on the 10-person team will fill out a form during that process. So one, you need to notice when that's happening. And if you're marketing, you need to get credit for that, right? You got 3 people to engage. That needs to be part of the way you value and measure what you do. But probably more importantly is you got all of those people engaged. And you need to measure the level of engagement, because the level of engagement of a buying team is what's going to determine whether or not they're really going to become an opportunity and move through the pipeline.
Yeah. And so when they're buying, by definition, we're assuming they're in market.
Right. Yeah.
So there is also the part when they're out of market or not in market or whatever you want to call it, which means we have to do something else in demand gen, or maybe the early phases of demand gen. But I think reputation marketing, branding becomes super important as well. So what is the role of reputation marketing, branding in an ABM play? Is it actually part of an ABM play?
Yeah. No, I think it's much bigger than we give it credit for, and it always has been. Except I think it happens mostly, I won't say mostly haphazardly, but the budget keeps getting cut for that pretty much everywhere. But buyers are buying based on your reputation. So they're coming to your website, they're looking at your content. What we know is that they're not talking to you directly, you're not talking to your sellers prior to actually deciding whether they want to buy from you. So to be clear, they're deciding whether they want to buy from you without talking to you. They're almost always talking to consultants or analysts. About 70% of buyers say that they talk to consultants or analysts. They're also talking to your peers. At least 50, 60% of buyers say they talk to your peers during that buying process, but they don't talk to you. So your reputation has to do the selling for you, in addition to what you just say about yourself. It's what you say about yourself plus what others say that actually makes that sale for you. And then by the time you get to the part where they talk to your sellers, they're confirming or validating a decision at that point. They're not making it anymore. So if your reputation isn't good enough for them to put you on the top of the list prior to talking to you, they're not going to choose you. You're going to lose those deals, and you're never going to know that they were there in the first place. So I think it's extraordinarily important. What you do to get your customers to be advocates for you, to talk nicely about you when you're not in the room, to say nice things about you on LinkedIn or wherever it is that they might say that for your kinds of solutions, extraordinarily important.
When they get to the point they want to buy, they're in market, it is because they want to satisfy a need, a business need.
Right.
So sometimes, and this is maybe from the 6 questions I have for you, the one about philosophy, marketing philosophy. What is your point on the fact that people say demand generation, sometimes they even call it demand creation. Can you create demand or not?
Very rarely, I would say. It depends on what kind of solution you have. So if you have a solution where you've got 2, 3, 4 competitors, you're not going to be creating demand for that. You're going to be capturing demand. You want to get your share of the demand that exists. But by definition, you make a category of thing that already exists and that people already buy. They determine when they have the need for it, right? And when they have the need for it, your job is to capture as much of that need as exists. There are some kinds of solutions that where nobody's got one now, where that category of solution doesn't really exist. You're making something new. You have to create demand for that. There's a latent demand, you could say, that the need exists in the marketplace for what you do. And it could be that businesses are solving that need in a different way. They're throwing a bunch of people at it and all of that, but now you've got technology that solves the problem, right? So there's no demand for your solution yet because people don't know it exists. In that case, you have to create demand, but probably the way that you do that most effectively is by influencing influencers and not by just running ad campaigns. You might have to do both, but you're probably going to be more effective there getting analysts and consultants and folks like that or journalists to write about the kind of solution rather than your direct efforts.
Yeah, but still, even in that case, at the end of the day, somehow you're solving a need. Otherwise,
that's right. Yeah, the need's got to exist. You're not likely to create the need. I think in some rare circumstances you can if you've got something that's really, really new. But I'm having a hard time even thinking what those things might be.
So brings me to my 5th question. If people are somehow in need of something and you're a seller and you want to get in contact, people are talking, and you guys in particular, about intent and signals.
Yeah.
What is that?
What
is intent data? What are signals? How do you define it?
Yeah. So I think the best way to think about it is when buyers in today's world have a business problem that they want to solve, when an organization has a business problem that they want to solve, they almost always will just go out on the internet and start looking around, and they're starting to ask questions like, what do I do to solve this? What do I do to solve that? They may not be saying, what product can I buy? But they're saying, how do I solve this problem? Whatever it is that they're doing, they're going out and they're looking, they're going to websites, they're Googling things, they're doing whatever, and that leaves a trail. That leaves a trail that can generally be tracked back to the accounts that they come from, not to the people, but to the accounts. So that trail of digital footprints around the internet is intent data. And there's a lot of different forms of it. If you're in software, people go to review sites and they look at the review sites. So when they're there, that leaves a signal. I would say anywhere that you get something for free on the internet, you have to realize that you're the product. So you're the product, and what's being sold is the fact that you're out there looking around. That gets packaged and sold as intent data. There's also the evidence that's on your website. So when some of those people come to your website, almost all of them will be anonymous when they're there. Again, we can find out where most of those people are coming from in terms of their account. And when you combine that with the other stuff that they're looking at, now you have a pretty good signal that says, this is a set of accounts that are in market. And that's what we use to identify them.
First-party data, your own signals, third-party, you get them from somewhere else. You bring them together. Yet, if you look at the technology stack that many companies use, it's marketing automation, it's CRM.
Yeah.
It's based on a lead-centric and MQL-compatible way of thinking.
Yeah.
What other technology do you actually need alongside those 2 platforms I just mentioned to actually make ABM? In the broadest definition of the term, successful.
Right. So I think the main thing you have to be thinking about is, how do I identify when a group of people from the set of accounts that I care about goes out into market to look around? And that means you have to be able to see all of those third-party intent signals. You have to be able to see all the signals that are on your own website. And you have to be able to see, of course, the people who filled out forms. That's not a given. So like most organizations today don't have a capacity to notice if 2 or 3 people from an account fill out a form instead of just one. Like most people just don't notice that that's happening. That's criminal, right? That should be changed, right? You should, I won't say you should be punished for that, but we're getting to the point where you should
Stepped on the wrist.
Right. But the problem is, it's very difficult if you have, all of those 3 things exist. You can buy different forms of that. You can buy third-party intent. You can get a tool that de-anonymizes your web traffic. And of course, you have a marketing automation tool or something that collects the leads. But if they're not connected, then it's still going to be almost impossible to understand which accounts are really in market, right? These disparate signals. So what you need is a system that brings those signals together and makes sense of them, all right? So like what's an example might be, if I've got 2 people who filled out forms and 5 people who've been on my website anonymously, and then a record of third-party intent signals, is that better than one where I had 3 people who are filled out a form and 2 people are on my website anonymously? It goes on like that. There are endless permutations. You're not going to be able to figure that out manually. And that's what AI is for, to look at those things, bring those signals together, look at that, identify the pattern that says, this is meaningful, you should pay attention to this, do something with this. And that's really what marketing needs. Marketing automation didn't automate much, right? This is the stuff that really needs to be automated, right? Seeing all those signals, I think of what we do at 6 Sense is a signal collection and sense-making machine. Just collect all of the signals, don't decide in advance what they're going to mean, but collect them, let the AI work against them and figure out what they do mean, and then act on what they mean.
Bonus question. So you provide the data, the technology, and all the insights. What is then still holding some companies back of going that way?
Really good question. I think, one, there's a lack of expertise within those organizations. They haven't done it before, almost by definition. This is new for most organizations, and it requires an understanding of the big picture. Like, what are we trying to accomplish? What's the strategy? What's the big go-to-market? And then how do all of these things that we're talking about fit in? How do they help us accomplish those things that we want to do with our go-to-market strategy? And because most organizations don't have people who've done this before, it's kind of, the blind leading the blind in a lot of cases. Plus, we've got new technologies that are coming into play. You actually need these new technologies to do this kind of stuff. And again, if your business doesn't have expertise in these things, it's going to be very difficult and painful to do that. So I think there's and then I would add one other thing, like the biggest impediment to doing all of this right now is probably the culture of organizations. The cultures are aligned to this way that we've done things for the last 15, 20 years. Leads, more, driving people at that. And that often takes an outside voice to help change. Like almost always takes an outside voice, or it takes new people coming in who are already on that bus. But for the most part, what it's going to be is an outside voice who comes in and says, here's how it works. I'm a neutral party. I'm not marketing. I'm not sales. Here's how it's worked. Here's how leading companies are doing it. Here's how we've helped other organizations do that in the past. So I think that's really important for most of these kinds of transformations that have to take place. And I think that's actually one of the words that we probably need to use. It's difficult to use because it sounds like a lot of work, but the truth is it is. It's a transformation for organizations. And so a lot of times that requires people who've been through this before, who can have the trust of both marketing and sales leadership to say, okay, I understand your skin in the game is just making this work. It's not being more marketing or being more sales. So for me, that's one of the things I think is really critical, is bridging the gap between the level of expertise you have on the staff today and what you need to have in the future, and also the conversations that marketing is having and the ones that sales are having. How do we get everybody together? Typically going to need some other voices to come in and help with that.
It's about weaving new fabric.
New fabric, yes. How about that?
Okay.